Hey there, folks. Welcome to another episode of Future Focus. My name is Justin Rupert. I'm the Learn It Coordinator for Goodwill Industries of Kansas. Today's episode is going to be on Google Sheets. Sheets is a application, a spreadsheet application, very similar to Microsoft Excel. They work pretty closely together, and it's a very intimidating program. But once you get your foundation under you, it becomes a very neat program, and you'll find all sorts of applications for it. But the learning curve is a little steep at first, so let's just go over some of the basics and see where we go from there. I'm going to set up a little screen share here, and we'll get right into our Google Drive. And again, I'm going to be working through my Google Drive. If you need any support on how to create a Google account or access Google Drive, feel free to visit our YouTube channel or our Facebook videos section for more information on that. So I'm in my Google Drive here, and I do have a number of options on how to create that first sheet. We can click up here on our new button. Sometimes I accidentally click on folder. We come down here to Google Sheets, and we hover over that little arrow button there, and we can create a blank spreadsheet or from a template. And like always, templates are a real time saver, and you can jump right into a monthly budget and start putting in your numbers and working with a budget real quickly. A number of options in here. Feel free to explore them at your own pace, but a lot of different ideas in there. Generally speaking, we're using sheets to organize, analyze, and store data. In this situation, I'm going to go back to my Google Drive and open up this sheet that I've begun for you all already. So right off the bat, we have a number of menu options. We have all sorts of information here. And of course, if you hover your mouse over any of these items, you'll see that it pops up a little description of what's going on there. But what I want to do is here go into my zoom tool and just increase the size of the screen a little bit, so maybe it's a little easier for you to see. One of your favorite tools, your new favorite tools, is going to be the undo button in Excel or Sheets, because this is one of those programs, if you start clicking around a little bit, you can get a little turned around and twisted. So be aware that that undo button is your friend, and don't be afraid to use it. Another thing I want to point out is that everywhere you take your mouse cursor, it's going to give you a different little icon, right? Sometimes by default, it's going to be the arrow. Now it's a little hand, and that means I can move things around. Over here on this little square right down here, it turns into a little plus sign. And so there's a lot of different ways you can interact with these cells, and that's going to be essentially our first term here is cells. So this sheet that you're looking up is comprised of cells. Right now I'm in cell A1. Now I'm in B2, and you read it column vertical to row horizontal. I'm in cell A5 here, and so on. You have a lot of cells and a lot of rows, probably more than you'll ever need, but it's good to know that you have options, right? Down here at the bottom, I can create more sheets within my workbook. So for example, I have a sheet 1, a sheet 2, I can have 3, 4, 5, 6. We do have a little menu option down here that allows me to rename it or color it. Let's give it a nice dark blue. Looks great. It didn't seem to take, but you can rename it definitely. So let's start putting some information in these cells, because you can put just about anything in there that you want, whether it's data, text, data in the form of numbers, data in the form of text, whatever you really want to put in there. So let's just go with something real straightforward. It's Tuesday, and it's May 12th. Check real quick. Yep, it's still May. So you can put any kind of information you want in there. I put some arbitrary numbers in there as well. But a couple things that we can do right off the bat with our data, we can format it any number of ways. If you think back to everything we learned on Google Docs in terms of changing the text to a bold or an underline, all those formatting tools are right up in here. Do you want to put a little background color into your cell? You can do so, light yellow. And let's make it bold. Let's change the font to something easy to read. That looks pretty easy to read. And we can change the size of it as well. Now, what happened here? I changed the size of the content in that cell, and now I can't read it. Well, these cells are flexible, of course. You can move things over so you can accommodate the size of that content. Another thing you can do, just kind of a quick resource, is double click in between the columns, and it automatically resizes it to the size you need. Now you've created a nice, interesting look here, and you want to copy that over and be consistent across your sheet. Well, you do have this paint format tool that'll allow you to adjust it. So, kind of interesting what's going on there. Looks like it adjusted my date and time to a numerical value, because I need to come up here and tell it is a date. And now I'm back to normal. There we go. Another interesting thing you can do in Sheets is use the Autofill tool. So when I hover right down there in the lower right, I get this little tiny plus sign, and I can click and drag, and it will autofill the days of the week. This also works for months of the year. It will also recognize patterns. So let's say 115 times 2, which is 230. If I select both these items, it should recognize a pattern. So what it's done is add 115 each time. And you'll also notice that it copied the formatting here, but not here, right? Because it copied this selection. So it's saying in that cell, you have some formatting, you've changed the size and whatnot, but in this one you haven't. So it's going to repeat that pattern. So while that's a really neat tool, sometimes it's not exactly what you want. So it can be a little intimidating and tricky like that. You always got to keep an eye on your sheets. So let's jump over here into sheet 2 real quick and look at a little bit of data here that I've put together. This is a list of Kansas wildlife, and these are the total critters I've spotted over the course of several months. Now, this is completely made up information. I have not gone critter spotting recently, but let's just deal with that. Well, let's just play with the numbers. So there's a number of ways we can use the power of Excel and Sheets, but your basic functions are going to be, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, finding the average, finding the count. These are all very basic ones that you'll use pretty regularly, and if you can figure those out and start to make sense of that, it's going to open up the whole program for you. So to add these cells down here, we could sit here and pull out our calculator and add all this up, but it kind of defeats the purpose, right? We want to make Excel work for us, or Sheets work for us. So in column B, I might just highlight, click and drag all the data that I want to add up. And you'll notice, if you're doing the math at home, you're probably coming up with the number 79, because it will automatically tell you right down here in the lower right what you've selected. If I select that, it tells me there's 119. If I go this way, 160. And that's great. That's a real quick tactic. But again, we're kind of defeating the purpose here. We want to actually use Sheets to do the math for us. So each cell is going to start with the equal sign. So we're going to kind of work backwards. If you can picture 2 + 2 = 4, we got to do it in reverse on Sheets or Excel. We say this cell is equal to 2 plus 2. So with that in mind, this cell B10 is equal to B2 plus B3 plus B4 and so on. And so there's our formula. It's up here in the formula bar. It's color coded so you can kind of keep track of things a little bit. And we can hit enter and it'll give us that number 79. And we can see the formula up there. That cell B10 is equal to B2 plus B3 and so on. Let's check the math. It checks out. There's another way of doing that. That's kind of a longhand when you're dealing with a whole lot of data like that. That can be kind of cumbersome, right? Well, we can introduce a different concept, formula, or a function, and we can do the sum. The way these work are a little bit differently. So you're saying equals the sum of this range. We have to throw in a equals or a parentheses, and then we give it the range. So as you'll see, a range is expressed cell colon cell. And we can put a close parentheses to wrap that up, hit enter, and we're saying this cell C10 is equal to the sum of C2 through C9. So you can see how these are the same formula. We're adding numbers up. We're just expressing it differently. One's a shorthand version, one's a longhand version, essentially. Now, once you got your formula in place here, guess what? You can use that Autofill tool to do the math for you. Now, if any of these numbers change, the numbers change. And what's the total number of critters spotted? 411. So that's just kind of a quick look at how Excel works. I know, again, it can be a little intimidating and tricky at first, but you can watch this video as many times as you want. And feel free to comment or ask questions because I know it's a tricky one. Next week, we're going to dive into doing a more practical hands-on method with Sheets. That's tracking your monthly expenses. And that's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to that. And again, you know, if you need any help with any of these programs, you can visit Google's Applied Digital Skills website, which is great. You can go to gcflearnfree.org. That's a Goodwill Community Foundation, Learn Free, has all sorts of information in there. And there's tons of resources online, but I appreciate you all watching. Looking forward to next week. Tracking your monthly expenses is something we can all benefit from. So until next week, I hope you all stay safe, take care, and we will see you then.